I'm the Vice President of the Live Music Association, and tonight we have a really exciting event for you guys. It's going to be a music industry career panel featuring Doug Bielmeier, one of the professors in the music industry department, and a bunch of very cool and successful and awesome student musicians. So we're going to do a bit of a Q&A and hear about their experiences in the industry. So here's Doug.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. All right, let's give it up for the Live Music Association, right? Don't clap into the mic. Well, great. Thanks for everyone who came tonight. Well, let's start out and let's just introduce ourselves. Just maybe talk a little bit about sort of our experience in the industry thus far, and just a little information about ourselves before we kind of get into some of these questions. I read some of these questions that are like really thought-provoking, so I'm pretty excited. So, Sydney, do we want to start with you?
Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Sidey Gish. I am a fifth year here, and I've done 2 co-ops, one at Aircraft Music Library and one at Island Records, working in A&R. And I've also been playing solo and touring for a year and a half, working with the agency APA and releasing albums independently online.
I'm Lucia. I am a 4th year student here. I've done 1 co-op, kind of merged into 2 things. So it was with Works Entertainment in Los Angeles, and then that turned into an internship with Lionsgate. I am also a musician, so I do a lot of stuff around Boston, also in Los Angeles. Then I'm from Minneapolis, so kind of hitting all the parts of the United States.
Hi, I'm Christian. I'm a 5th year here at Northeastern. I've produced and engineered a couple albums for different artists. Some of them have been my own for my band Orson and the Rosebuds, as well as doing like movie soundtrack. And yeah, my industry has been, my experience in the industry has been just primarily a lot of like DIY engineering and booking. It's mostly around Boston.
What's happening, everybody? My name's Cassidy. I'm an artist, producer. Went to Northeastern, studied finance, weird. Managed an artist named Kyle Band while at Northeastern, and also was a college rep for Universal Music Group. And this is my cousin Marcus. Yeah.
Well, great. I'm Doug Bielmeier. I've worked for about 15 years in the industry, not only as an artist, but primarily as a recording engineer and producer. Worked for years in Nashville and DC. And I'm now associate teaching professor in the music industry department. And just a quick plug, I teach the 3 recording courses, which focus on production and mixing techniques. So if you're ever interested in a recording course, let us know, stop on by, sign up. But we're not here to talk about me and plugging the recording programs. Let's talk a little bit about, I read this first question, and I think it's a really interesting one because I think it's something probably we've all faced. And that's the moment when you realized that you had a passion for music, whether it was recording, producing, or being an artist. And maybe we could go around and just talk a little bit about maybe the moment when you realized, you know, this is something I want to do. This is not just a hobby, because I think there's a lot of hobby producers. I think there's a lot of sort of hobby artists and musicians, which I think that's great. I think this is great as an outlet. But what was the point when you said, no, I need to pursue this. I need to really, you know, this has become now a passion of mine. Sydney, would you like to start? It's a tough question, right?
It's all good. Probably like, well, when it comes to music industry, it was really kind of a crapshoot. I always felt that I wanted, like I needed a creative outlet of some sort, and whether that was writing or drawing or like making music. And when I realized that you could go into a DAW and like play over yourself and not have to talk to anybody, I was like, oh my God, that's like allowed. And so through that, I started researching more about what producers do, what engineers do, and kind of like figuring out that like idea of like, oh, like the behind the scenes music person like is a vague idea of a job that I thought about as a teenager. And I was just involved in like choir and music theory and stuff, and when I was applying to colleges and I found that Northeastern had a music industry major, I felt that it was like a great combination of kind of a more practical study combined with what I was interested in. And so that's why I ended up majoring in this. And then through being in these classes and doing my co-ops, I've learned more about the industry and found out about like what sections of it I feel like I can do a better job in than other ones, and or just kind of like what fits better. And then I've just been kind of winging it this whole time, but I really needed an outlet, so I made a lot of work, and just through that, it's been kind of, that's how I got here.
I'm from the Midwest originally, so I feel like growing up, I kind of always knew that I wanted to do music or something in the entertainment industry. So when I was really little, I was like, I'm gonna be an actress. And I was like, I don't like this. What I like is like being on stage and like working more with people and doing stuff that I want to do and making my own art. So I started at Chapman University, which is in California. And there I just kind of felt like it was either I could do film or I was not doing anything at all. It was really hard to do music and film. So I came here just because I was like, I know Boston scene a little bit better. I know that I can do film and I can also do my music stuff. And that's where I found like all of my bandmates that I play with, and they're very versatile with what they like to do. But it's kind of like that common passion of music. So I feel like that for me was kind of what drew me in.
I started working in making music back in high school. I was in a band, and I don't want to call it a Black Keys cover band because we did play other music, I swear. But I really loved writing music, and it was always like an outlet for me. I don't think it wasn't until I got to college when I had kind of agency of my own time and got to control more of like how I spent it. I realized that like any free time was going to like working on music, and like I would forego sleep to work on music and like struggle to balance homework with my projects and music. And that was when I kind of realized, like also trying to work with other people too, that like maybe I was putting a little bit more of a priority on this, especially when it came to like depending on other people to like work on projects together. And like I love collaboration, but just like some people are hobbyists, and that's totally cool. But sometimes like I want to work on things with a little bit more of constant engagement and with maybe a little bit more of an ambitious goal in mind. So yeah, I think freshman year college is when I realized I really wanted to go for it.
Yeah, so mine's a little different. I was a kid in high school who was passing out tapes and just trying to get on. I was doing shows in the city and just like not really knowing what I was doing, but just ripping it, you know what I mean? And I feel like my whole life I've been trying to find something that's in me. I feel like it's a seed of something. And I feel like my job has been to cultivate that little oak seed into the tree. And like there's no real shortcuts. Like I've had to go through even the personal growth that it takes to say something that means something. You know what I mean? And like I still go through that now. And the ups and downs are severe, you know? And like I didn't enjoy school because I was too busy writing songs. So I would have to try and find ways where it's like Friday night in the library and I'm overhearing like different languages and stuff, and find a way to carve that into material and make something that's inspiring. Like just use your environment. I got in the business side with Universal and with management because my voice gave out. So I had a palm up on my vocal cord that actually paralyzed me. And that was like the most dark point of my life because I couldn't talk. So I had to listen for the first time. And yeah, that's what drew me into helping other artists and being involved in other ways. But now the voice is back and we're banging. Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, it kind of sounds like it's sort of something we have to do. And it's something that's effortless. Not effortless in actually spending 80 hours straight working on something, mixing something, but yeah, it's something that we sort of have to do. Which gets me to so it's something we have to do, and there's a question that I read here about sort of how we do it. So I think the question asked how you record your music, but maybe quickly we could just talk a little bit about our process, and that could be, yeah, do you use like Fruity Loops, or do you use Live, or do you use Pro Tools, or you know, how are you going about recording the material that either you release or that you use as part of your marketing?
I think I started recording in GarageBand mostly, and in just like voice memos and like recording apps on my phone. And when I was a teenager, that was like to hear what I like sounded like, because I didn't know. And like then I could play it back and be like, oh, I guess that, like it would be me singing Bruno Mars and I'd be like, does that person sound good? And then like maybe when I started multi-tracking my voice more in GarageBand because it was easier to organize tracks that way. And then when I got to college, I started working in GarageBand more, putting more an emphasis on learning how to produce. And I put out 2 compilations and an album that I made in GarageBand. And the album I mastered in Audacity and just threw compressors at it. And like, it still exists that way, and it's lo-fi because I said so, but it's low-key just bad. So if something's, it's fine. And then I learned how to use Logic for the next album, and that I mixed and mastered in Logic for that one. And I'm still planning on using Logic for the near future, and just seeing what else I can do. Because I think it's really cool how a lot of people learn how to kind of have a functional production space in their homes, and like I don't know, like Jack Antonoff was like Bleachers for a bit, and now he's like Jack Antonoff, and he has this whole thing in his house. It's like as you just keep like following that path, you can just make a home studio that works for whatever your needs are. So I think that kind of experimenting with what you have and then following your curiosity and Googling what you're interested in learning more about is a pretty good move. Yeah, just trying new stuff out can be really fun.
I mean, I don't do a lot of my own recording. I also started in GarageBand. I feel like most people up here probably do the same because it's free on your Mac. And I was always doing that. But it is kind of limiting, I feel like, GarageBand. So it was kind of, I learned to use Pro Tools a little bit more. But for me personally, I have a lot of other instruments that I work with, and I like don't know how to exactly mic drums. Or when I started, I was like, I have no idea how to touch that. So it was like finding people that knew what they were doing with that and reaching out to them and being like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you miking this? Why are you doing this? And asking questions from people that know stuff, I think is where I've learned the most. So over time, it's like I do feel comfortable with those softwares and like working in Pro Tools, working in Logic. They all kind of mimic each other in one way or another. I just like, I don't know if it's just because I'm like a people person. I'm like, I want to work with other people that know how to do this better than I can so that I can do other things. But yeah, that's kind of how I've done it. But
yeah, I think there's this idea of this artist who's like kind of locked in a tower, like makes something and then emerges every spring with an album.
Yeah.
And then there's the other type of artist who it's just everyone's featured on the album. Like it says the artist's name and then featuring like 26 people.
Yeah.
So, and there's everywhere in between. But yeah, I think the technology definitely lends itself to be able to do that, to really collaborate, or to choose not to collaborate too. Yeah. Christian, how about you?
So I started with begging my parents to take me to the Apple Store so I could use GarageBand on the computers there. And eventually we got our own Mac, and I hated the way my voice sounded, I hated the way I played everything. So I would just use the built-in loops, and I would just start stacking and start looping, and it probably played into like this maximalist attitude I have now, which I've been trying to work against. But anyway, yeah, eventually I started, I got like a USB to guitar cable cord, and I just like recorded my electric guitar DI, and then eventually like I was like, I want to try more sounds, and I want to like try singing, and I want to try and do all this other stuff. So I just kind of like, it's like I'll buy a microphone, I'll buy a MIDI keyboard, and it all just kind of like helped me get the sounds I wanted into the machine. And I think back when I was on co-op as a color scientist, none of my co-ops have been involved with the music industry, but all my free time has been. And when I was co-oping there, I just like, any free time I had, at work or at home, I would just watch YouTube videos on like, how do you mix, how do you engineer, just like general tips. There's so much educational content out there, and a lot of it's actually pretty engaging, and I think very useful, and it really has changed the way like I try to make music on a technical level. I was worried about like, if I learn too much, it's gonna stifle the creativity, but like honestly, that has not been the case. If anything, it's really helped me to just like make the process faster and like get a closer connection with the music I'm making, I think. What was it? Oh yeah, and just like working with other people, working on my own projects first, so that way I can experiment, do some trial and error work on my own time, on my own music. And that way, like when I get to work with other artists, it's I have like more of a some sort of like background and some ideas I can like bring in to like work with them and see if they're interested in. Over the summer I was doing some really DIY recording in my garage, and it was just an SM57, moving it around a room to mic, bass, guitar, drums, vocals, everything was an SM57, and bed sheets were all I had to like treat the room. I thought it turned out pretty well enough, and now I'm live engineering with Tiny Dorm, and you know I was like, oh, this will be legit, you know, like they're an organization, they know what they're doing, and like they do know what they're doing, but also like we didn't have enough mic stands last time, so it was like, how the heck are we gonna like get overheads for drums if we don't have a stand to hold it? And like part of it was hanging a mic from a ceiling, but like hey, it works. So
The ceiling fan trick. Yeah.
yeah. Forgot what the question is, so I'm gonna conclude it, but that's my long-winded answer.
Connor.
Yeah, I did what he said. I think the theme is like use what you got. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have money and you can't have access to studios, and you got to go get yourself a cheap mic and just rip it. You know what I mean? And I'll say two things. One I did right, and one thing I did wrong. The thing I did right was I would get inspiration from like, you know, who's heard of Harry Potter? It's like taupe. Harry Potter was written allegedly on napkins, right? So like you use what you got. So if you have a journal and you're in a strange country, just like rip the journal and like whatever's going on through your head, and like almost it's like capturing lightning in a bottle. Like I feel like every time I make something, I capture a little bit of myself. And it's like a time capsule for even like I'll re-look at stuff I wrote that I forgot I made. I'm like, God damn, that's what I was thinking. So that's what I did right, is being resourceful. What I did wrong was I had this attitude of like, man, I need to have like a story. I can't take classes on music production. I have to do shit that's nothing to do with music. School is gonna ruin everything for me. I'm gonna become mainstream. I'm gonna talk about shit that doesn't open my soul. It's gonna be terrible. I'm gonna be with other people who don't care about what they're doing. That was my view of school. I hated it. So like now I'm at a point of humbling myself to the stuff I have to learn. So I'm sitting in there with engineers now that I'm at a level where I can go in and afford to have engineers work on my stuff and different producers. I'm like, God damn, I gotta learn this stuff. You know, so I look at people who actually know what they're doing like, God man, if I wasn't balancing exchange rates in school and I was mixing more, I could probably do a better job making the music. So I think it's a combination. And like as a final note, I'll say like I kind of approach music as an athlete in the sense of like you put in your reps and at the end of the day you're stronger. So if you have to write 5 songs a day, you write 5 songs a day. And then at the end of the day, you wake up the next morning a little bit better. And that process just keeps going and you wake up one day like, wow. Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah, I've always had the philosophy that whatever my day, whatever I have to do in a certain day, whatever the responsibilities are, I'm going to spend this much time on music. Whether that's, you know, at least an hour a day, 2 hours a day, every day I have to spend time on music. And but I totally agree with that mentality. Like you can't learn jazz in a practice room. Like you have to go out and do shows. You have to go out and even like learning if the piece works or not. So you write a piece of music and you write a song and you like play it live or you present it somewhere and you realize like it just does not connect to anyone. And so that can be part of the process too, is just sort of using experience to just get better at your craft.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, something that inspired me recently was someone said, yeah, and then I learned to I taught myself how to play basketball, which was a bad idea because I didn't know how to play basketball. You know, so like get around people who know what they're doing, and people are human and they'll help you. So like wherever, like if it's being an artist, if it's the business side, there's never been a time in my life where I've reached out to someone and they haven't been willing to help. It has never been a problem. Even people that are quote unquote big shots in the industry, they'll always drop you some advice. And sometimes it's golden advice. Yeah.
Fantastic. So kind of speaking about, you know, we talked about some of the technology we use. So, you know, there's this whole concept, one of the questions was about sort of your artist voice or, you know, what it is you're doing and you know, what your niche is, what your thing is. Maya, I noticed, I think some of your music you described as genre fluid. So maybe, I don't mean to skip Sidney here, but maybe you could just start and talk a little bit about, is that kind of how you identify yourself as an artist, as someone who is genre fluid, or how is that, how did you find your voice or kind of the thing that you do?
Yeah, I think it had to do with someone, I was talking about like what songs I was putting together on an EP, and they were like, oh no, you can't do that because they don't sound the same. And I was like, I don't want them to sound, why is that fun? Like I love Mac DeMarco, but I am going to shade him. If you listen to his most recent album, that shit is boring. Like it's not interesting to listen to. It's really all the same pace. So for me, I feel like I don't want all my music, a lot of the stuff that I just put out is like angsty, I don't know. It's like me like screaming, that makes it sound like I'm doing screaming music. That's not what it sounds like. But it's just like, it's really upbeat. It's very like high energy stuff. And a lot of it is like juxtaposed, which I feel like I do a lot with the melody of the instruments and stuff, and then what I'm saying, they're kind of always contrasting. So I feel like that's the one thing that always stays consistent with my music, but I don't want to just be stuck with the genre, which I feel like a lot of people in indie are like, my indie is different because it's this kind of indie. But it's like, it's more like, for me, when I say genre fluid, it's like, I don't want all of my shit to sound the same when I'm putting it out, and I don't want to just be limited. Lizzo had like a big thing that she said about that, where she's like, I don't want to identify with the genre because then that puts me, like, I can't grow outside of that. And I feel like if you approach your music with like, we're specifically doing this, that's okay, but just for me, I like to play around. So yeah.
Christian, so what you do as an engineer, as your process, and as also an artist, how did you arrive upon that? Do you feel like you found your way, or are you still sort of forging your path?
It's a good question, and I hope I have a good answer. I think I was working on a project once, and the attitude of the room was, we do not have time to get things wrong. And I found that I do not work well in that mentality at all. I feel like if we're not going to give ourselves an opportunity to like get it wrong, then like how the heck are we going to actually know we're getting it right in the first place? And so like when it comes to like engineering and just like, when it comes to engineering, like I know like you mic a snare like this, I'm like, sure, we'll do that. But like, I think there's so many opportunities to like get some new ideas in there, and like if you're doing everything by the book, it's harder to have a unique voice as an artist, especially I think like on the songwriting end, or as an artist, a lot of the songwriting process happens in the DAW, where part of the mixing is kind of like an extension of the instrument, and sometimes it can get a little too much. I'll be the first to admit I use way too much reverb. But I think like getting it wrong like that, and like I listened back to some songs I released like a year or two ago, and I'm like, man, I still didn't learn that lesson. But like I think it's still like nobody knows I didn't learn that lesson except for me and except for the people I've told that to. So I don't know. I feel like I used to be very high stakes about the music I released, and like, when is it done? When does it sound perfect? Or will it ever sound perfect? And like now it's just like, it sounds good now. Like maybe I'll learn something in 2 weeks after I release it that completely changes the way I look at it now, but I'm not gonna wait 2 more weeks to like try to maybe learn that lesson.
So Sidey, you said you talked about your first album, and you talked about how it was like lo-fi on purpose, or it was kind of all done yourself. So you said when you did your next album that you used a different technology. Was that part of you sort of finding how you wanted how you wanted that music to be perceived, or what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I think what really has been proven for me over and over to be true is like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I never will. And like, I just like going in a DAW and making something, and like the more that if I have that mindset, then I can go and create something instead of being like, okay, like what's the next big deal gonna be? It's like weird. Like I think that, I kind of had a goal for I definitely had some sort of goal for the albums I've made, but like really it ended up being something like completely different. Like the idea in my head that I had, like, oh, what if I made an album and it was called this and it was kind of like this? And then once I make it, it's like something totally different. And then once it exists for a month, it's something totally different. And it's like, that is inevitable no matter what you're putting out, no matter how many people you hire to work on something. It's never gonna match what's in your head, and it's never gonna be what you want it to be, and that's fine. So like, that's kind of what has been helpful for me to like keep working and putting out stuff, is that it's totally unpredictable, but as long as you have fun, it's likely to translate.
Connor, you want to talk a little bit about sort of your vision for yourself as an artist and where you are on that path?
Oh, vision, I like that. Yeah. So I have 3 people that I'm a really obsessive music listener, so like if I like someone's stuff, I'll go the extra mile to get everything they ever touched, right? So like for me, that's Breaking Benjamin, John Mayer, and Nas, right? So those 3 are weird influences to blend together, but it's almost like one of you mentioned something about like a box earlier of like genres and stuff, right? Like even words are a box, right? And I'm gonna get a little trippy on you. So like, we box things in, and the extent that we break them is the extent we can be truly unique. And people like the idea of unique in the past tense, but they don't like the sell. It's very hard for me to sell you a dish you've never tried before, right? So what I'm trying to do is just like break every wall I can and be so original and so me that it combines everything that's ever influenced me. It doesn't have to be music. It could be movies. It could be conversations. It could be my people. It could be everything, right? And find a way to express that. And that's when I feel like you get something incredible. Like that's when I've seen artists who are like, man, where did that? I remember listening to Chance the Rapper being like, where did that come from, bro? Did this dude like sit in the back of church and just hum for like decades, and then all of a sudden like found a way to put so like everybody's unique, right? And I feel like a lot of people try to be everything else, and that's the greatest fight I feel like everybody has, not just in music but in every other career, is like you have to find a way to break the wall and be who you really are. And like that's a big mission statement of me as an artist, is to inspire people to be who they really are. You know, like even when I have conversations with people, I really want to cut through the resume and get to where you're at, you know, and figure out, because it's to me it's a soul thing. Like who are you really, and are you brave enough to show that? And like for me it's a process. So my vision is being absolutely raw and I don't even know what that is, to be honest, because right now I'm working with a lot of like metal music and blues and hip hop beats, and it's weird and it's random, and I'm playing The Weeknd in one room and like, you know, blues in the other, just weird stuff. But weird is you, usually. So like that's what now I'm not talking too much.
No, thanks. That's fantastic. So one of the questions that was put forth was about your relationship to the industry. So you all have a different and kind of unique relationship to the industry. So maybe we could kind of go down the row here and maybe talk a little bit about your relationship to the industry and how you made that, how you formed that relationship. Maybe even like how you'd like to improve that relationship, or you know how your time here at NU has influenced that, or just other things that you've done to foster that relationship.
Yeah, so from both of my co-ops, I developed a number of connections, mostly when I worked at Island, because that was really cool. There were a bunch of people working there, and the winter break when I was home before I moved to New York for my spring co-op at Island is when I released my second album, and that album got put on New Music Friday through like a Twitter thing, which is like, but it got put on New Music Friday US and UK, and through that I like triggered the A&R response for a lot of people and got a bunch of cold emails from random people who just email any unsigned independent artist who's on those. And I also had started working at Island at that time, and I didn't know what was going on at all. I was at work all day, and whoever wanted to meet with me, I met with them, and I was polite, and I like drank a coffee, but I didn't know what the subsections of what they were offering to me. I didn't know what they wanted from me, and I felt like a child emperor in all of the cases. Like, I had no idea, but I was like, not like, okay, like what, do you want to make me fit? Like, no, I was just like, hey, like, thank you for making me like a weird professional, like, mask. I don't even know what went on, but I had a bunch of meetings, and some of them were like way like, they didn't necessarily go badly, but it was just clear that we wanted different things and we felt differently about, because I didn't know what I was trying to do either, but I wanted to like grab whatever was going on and like make sure I made the right decision with it. So the first person I started working with was my agent, And it's really my agent and his assistant who went to Northeastern, Carly Goldberg. She graduated the year I was a freshman. And so we met up, and Greg booked a lot of the bands that I really liked, and I had been going to see shows for. And my internship ended in the end of June. And at this point, it was like February or March. And so I was like, okay, like I'm at Island for 6 months, and then at the end of that, what's going to happen? Like I go back to school in September, so I wanted to go on tour was my first goal. Instead of like worrying about, oh, who's going to be my manager, as in like who's going to oversee my career that I don't understand and understand it better than me. Like no, I'm going to terribly manage myself for a year and hire a guy like months later, which is what I did. And now it kind of works, but it's still very confusing, and I'm in school now and I'm going to finish school. But it's been a weird crapshoot, but overall I agreed to every person who reached out to me, and I was lucky, but it was an algorithmic spike that resulted in all of those meetings from me recording in my house. So I don't know how to get meetings otherwise, but if anybody reaches out to you, like I don't think anything like that will ever happen again. Like it was the most out of nowhere algorithmic spike that ever happened to me ever. And like so many people emailed me who just email anyone who's on those playlists, and so that's how I met a lot of people, and just kind of through it's really all about vibes, and that's sad, but it's like even like walking around like Island events versus like APA events versus like other sorts of events, it really is all about kind of like how people interact with artists, interact with each other, and kind of just like through being really polite and interacting with people like they're people, instead of like you're trying to prove something, is always, I think, gonna get you farther than putting up a front, unless you're in like a really egotistical person's office, like, and it's clear that they feel that way about themselves. So as long as you're really nice and forward and talking to people, I think that's the best route. And yeah.
Well, I think in the beginning, especially, it is a lot of like trial error, really random things that happen to you getting on playlists randomly, and it's also like what I do the most with my time is like cold emailing, which is disgusting and makes me feel really gross, because you are just like sending emails to venues, to blogs, to literally any and everything, and you're like, hey, this is what I do, this is my stuff, look at it, please write about it, here's press that I've had, and compiling all that. So I feel like when I first started out, I had no idea how any of that shit worked. I, again, grew up in the Midwest. My parents do nothing with music. No one in my family is remotely connected to music, so I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. So it was a lot of like me when I was there, just like Googling stuff to be like, how do you get on playlists? Like, how do you write music? Like, whatever it was. So it was, I feel like that was all it was just trial error, email, and then random stuff like getting on a playlist and getting your song up there. Like, that, I feel like when I've gotten emails from out of the blue, it's because of that. They're like, I heard your music on Discover Weekly. This is where I heard it. Blah, 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 will you do this for me? Blah, 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 can we meet, can we talk? So it is like, you do go in a lot, I feel like, with what Sidney said, with like, your connections are based a lot on how people treat you and how you perceive them, and how you can tell if they're like schmoozing on you. I feel like you can really tell, and maybe some people like that, but I definitely don't. So I think in the industry, just kind of like being kind and genuine to me says a lot. Even if you're just an artist working with other artists and like booking people, it's really important to like have that mentality and like put your ego aside, even if you know you're better and think you're better, and just kind of like tuck that away, because like people take notes, and I think that the people that you perform with, or like even at venue spaces, they're really important. Everyone is important in the process, so just being aware of that has like really helped me, at least.
I would definitely like back up or double down on what you're saying about like the cold emailing and like that whole process of just spending a lot of time sending a lot of emails to people to try and make some sort of connection. I can definitely say in my experience, it's been a lot of like no replies or rejections. But on the one chance you actually get someone who's like, yeah, I like what you're making and I want to talk to you more about it. Like that one connection can always be a door to so many more connections, and arguably stronger connections than you might have gotten with just more cold emailing. So I think in like that respect, it's a low percentage game, but I think it's always worth like really giving it a try and giving it the time. I think when I first started kind of taking music seriously, my big project was like this big collaborative album, and I wanted to like 14 tracks and like get a different artist on each track, and it was a lot of just like calling people or messaging people who like I barely knew, and just like, hey, I've got this song. Any chance you might want to like do something on this? I feel like, you know, I know you sing, I know you play. Like, I think you could do like some sort of like some great work on this, and I'd love to hear what you think. And for them, I was totally surprised because I was like a freshman like dork who like was really not good at like speaking at parties, and like was just kind of like cold messaging people on Facebook who like I had met at like open mics, and I was really shocked to say like everyone was like, yeah, no, totally, like I'd love to talk to you more about this. Like people were so much more welcoming and open to trying things out than I expected. And like I finished the project, and I'm really happy with just like how many people I was able to meet, how many different voices I was able to like work with. Yeah, I think I think throughout, I really don't have like any formal connection with the industry, but I really do love working on projects, and like I just finished mixing an alt hip hop album, and I don't really even listen to hip hop. I should, I don't. I've worked on like alt rock acoustic EPs, and like that's not really my thing either, but my friend was like, I want to do this, and I was like, sure, I will be more than glad to like learn and work with you if you're willing to have the patience to learn and work with me. And there's been other things like doing music for theater. I'm doing sound design for New Renaissance's production of What Rough Beasts. Come see that, it's in November, I don't know the dates. I've never sound produced anything, I've never worked the board for a theater, but you know, I applied, they thought I was qualified, and here I am now, working on it. And I feel like just doing work is a great way to like build a body, like build a portfolio. I really value that personally. I have yet to see if other people value that. But it's also just really good at meeting people. I think meeting people and just kind of being outgoing and maybe talking to people even though you're not too confident about it is a great way to just kind of find more work and find people who are just as eager as you are.
Yeah, carpe diem, man. Just do what you can and like use whatever energy you got around you. Like I would stumble. I'm kind of, since my inception as like a child, I would always be the kid in the room who would want to talk to everybody and be like, yo, what's up, what's up, what's up? Everyone's like, you're a built manager. And things just happen so randomly. Like you'll never be able to, I'm stealing a Steve Jobs quote, you'll never be able to connect the dots going forward. Like I remember I was kind of a ghost at Northeastern because I was just out doing shows and you know, booking for the artist I was managing, and we did this random dive bar where like 10 people came out. And you have those nights that are so long and so hard, and you're making no money, and you're trying to go to school, and you're paying tuition, and it's really tough, right? And the passion is so strong that you're staying through it, and you're like, man, like other people aren't about this. We're gonna get through. And I get a call from a guy who was at that show who says, hey man, you know, I run the Boston Music Awards. Do you guys want to headline the show? And it's like, and then 2 weeks later, you got an exam the next morning and you're backstage at the Boston Music Awards and your artist is playing the Boston Music Awards. It's like, who would have known? But since you did that dive bar, like the little pieces, don't overlook the little steps. A conversation can go so far, you know? I had a phone call from a kid named Alex, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Alec Karagagis, who called me and he's like, yo man, he's like, I met you 4 years ago at a cypher we did outside the Middle East Club. I was like, oh yeah? I thought it was like a weird prank call or whatever. He was like, I'm interning for Universal Music Group. We need to fill this position. Do you have time to talk? I said, hell yeah, I got time to talk. And all of a sudden I'm talking to the VP of Universal, and they're like, not the VP of Universal, pause. VP of a department of Universal. And they're like, man, like, and I was just so enthusiastic about the music that they gave me the job on the spot. All of a sudden I had the access keys to every backstage in Boston. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh my God. So I had the Universal card and everything, and then it's like, you just never know what you're doing. And then 4 months later, they fly me out to LA and I'm sitting in an elevator with Nick Cannon. It's like, what? It's like, what kind of weird universal, like, universe twist can get you in places? And then the universe will drop you back at the bottom of the mountain and say, now you gotta go to work. But just follow your nose. You know what I mean? And just try stuff and never be afraid. And my boy's got a great anecdote about this.
Yeah.
This is Marcus.
What's up? My name's Cuss. I'm a trombone player. I go to Berkeley in Boston. I'm a senior. Yeah, so like, just to add on, like this summer, got hit up by 50 Cent's manager, and he wanted me to play, trombone over one of his artist tracks. And like, I didn't even know what I was doing, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is like one of the biggest things that's ever happened to me, right? like for real. And so, you kind of just learn as you go, you know what I mean? Like you have these experiences come along and you just learn from them. You really just learn from your mistakes. I was asking like everyone, I even hit him up and I was like, yo, like, what should I do in this situation? Like, any advice, any tips? And he told me like, what my rate should be, and he told me like what I should do. And sure enough, we did it, and it was like a success. So, that's the thing, in the music world, I feel like you're gonna get hit up. You're gonna get all different kinds of opportunities like handed your way, and you just gotta make the best of them when you get them.
And just to
Thanks, Marcus. He's like the fifth Beatle here.
So, can I add a final point?
Please do.
So like, what's also like, because that reminded me, is like, don't put the money first, in the sense of like, there'll be moments where it's very clear cut and like you're making a choice between the money and the art. And the industry is not, the world and the universe wants you to succeed, but sometimes the industry doesn't. You know what I mean? You will face opposition, you will have tension, you will have friction. You know what I mean? But stay true to your guns. And if there's one thing Northeastern Business School taught me, is like, business done well means everybody walks away happy, right? So like, if the deal is loaded, or if the conversation is loaded, or if something's loaded on one side, it's gonna be trouble. And it's gonna come up subtly and it's gonna ruin things. Like I ended up breaking up with the artist I managed over a money problem, right? Because we couldn't see eye to eye on things. And good business should never be the case. You know what I mean? It should always be fair. And that's really the organic way to build. It's so tempting to take a bag or take a check. But if it doesn't feel right and it's not right and it's not right, then you gotta relook at it.
Well, that brings up one of the questions here. I know we might want to do some audience questions. I know we're kind of running on time here. But that was one of the specific questions, especially if there's somebody sitting out in the audience tonight that is working on music, is working on something, and is sort of interested in getting into the industry or promoting their music or moving their music. It's the time when I ask each of you to sort of maybe share one of your little tips or something that has helped you be successful or at least get you to where you are now. Something that you think might resonate with somebody in the audience. It's a tough one. Or you, Sidey?
I think I would probably want to just circle back on like the cold emailing thing. I like how you described it as a game, because like if somebody receives a cold email from like a student who's polite and not obnoxious, they're not going to think, oh my god, what a waste of my time. They're just going to like either ignore you or respond to you. And a lot of the time, if you email somebody who works at a company that you're interested in, just say, hey, would you want to meet for coffee? I'm a student at like X University, Northeastern University, and I want to like, I don't know, just like talk about your job and talk about what you're doing. And like, I think it's really interesting. I just want to learn a little bit from you if you're down. Like, I can meet you for coffee by your office. If you're able to do that, like, either they ignore you because they're busy, or they like meet up with you. They're not gonna like respond to you saying like, oh, I hate you, or they're not gonna like read the email and think, oh my god, what an entitled loser. Like, they're not gonna do that. It is a game, and as long as you send one cold email and not 5 in a row that are very vague and obviously made by a computer, you're gonna be fine, and nobody's gonna be offended, because like everybody gets a cold email all the time, every single day. And if they ignore it, it doesn't mean they don't like you, it means they're too busy. So as long as you're not obnoxious, entitled, or sending something where you're just replacing one proper noun and everything else is like a standard script, because people can tell. Like, if you send a legitimate, like, short, curt, polite email to somebody, just if you're curious, if you want to meet them, like, it's probably going to go over just fine, and it's probably a really good idea to look into doing some of that.
I think the biggest thing, which I'm so bad at following this advice, is not comparing yourself to other people, because I think it's really easy in this industry to be like, oh my god, look at this person who's literally 16 and look at their career, and I am doing nothing. So I think that's really hard to like stop yourself from doing, but if you focus on what you're doing and you're like, okay, that's not me right now, I can't do that, obviously I can't like wake up one day and become this star. This is what I can do. Like, I can send emails, kind of like what Sidney said. I can do this, I can record stuff, I can reach out to these people and kind of using your resources and focusing on what you can do in the moment, I think is the most beneficial, because you can, honestly, that takes up so much time to just sit there and be like, wow, I have no streams, or like I don't have any music out, and that is like, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that. And I feel like when I was releasing my EP, it was supposed to be done in like February. It didn't come out until like September or something like that. Like, that's crazy. It took so much time because it kept getting delayed. And with that, I was like, you know what? Like, I can't, this is what I can do to fix my problems that I'm having right now. If I sit here and think about how this person has an album out and I don't, like, that's not helping me. And nothing is going to change anyway. So kind of like, it does take a lot of practice. And like I said, I'm not very good at following that advice, but I think over time, the more you're able to do that and be like, I'm going to try to do this instead, and like, I'm going to try to email this person, I think is a lot more beneficial. So.
What was it, last year or 2 years ago, I had like a New Year's resolution to just like get out and perform more, partly because I just wanted to like meet more people, I wanted to get better at performing, I wanted to really just be more engaged. I didn't hit the goal, but I think one of the most important lessons I learned from it was that like nobody cares about the stakes are not nearly as high as you might think they are, especially when you're starting out. Like, I remember bombing sets, and like I was always, it's like originally, like I was like, you feel this fear like, oh, like if I suck, people are gonna like boo me or like just like give me these looks. But like genuinely, if you do a bad set, nobody cares, nobody talks about it, and like if you're cool with those kind of stakes, then like go do a bad set, go risk it. Like it's okay, because like you will have a good set, and like you will have someone come up to you afterwards and say like, hey man, like I really like that song, where can I listen to you? Or like one time, like one of the most like empowering moments was like I was playing a set at after hours, because I'm always playing at after hours, and this one kid comes up to me and he's like, hey, I heard you play that song 2 years ago here, and like I love how you like updated it and it sounds really good. And I was like, oh, someone is like actually listening. And like that was a very, very good moment that I clearly still think about. But just yeah, the stakes are not nearly as high as you think they are. If you're worried about releasing that first EP or first single because like, I don't know, you're worried that like somebody will ridicule you, or like someone won't take you seriously after that, like if it's not good, then you won't get a response. But that's good, because that means the next thing you can release can like almost have like a clean slate. You know, there's really less, it's not as loaded as you think it's going to be. Every release is an opportunity to kind of like redefine yourself and set the bar at a different place.
Yeah, I think there's three things I'll share that really helped me. One is surrounding yourself with people that encourage you. You know, look, we're not as strong as we think we are. And like, you know, when I'm talking to my brother on the phone and I'm like, man, I'm about to go work at this Wall Street finance firm, he punches back with, yo, that's bullshit. He goes, you want to do this music stuff, right? So you have to put yourself in that. You know, and that's just the real moments that you pick up. And then you'll have these little things that happen to you on the journey. You know, like I'm driving Uber one night and I pick up someone who's a fan of my stuff. That's crazy to me, you know? And they spark you back to life, and you have to stay inspired, and you have to be around people who encourage that. You know, like you need people who will not put you down. And like, it's so easy to get around friends that are just not your friends. You know, like true friends, people you trust with everything, those are to be valued more than anything else, because they will be with you beyond everything. And they're not easy to come by, and you have to build it. The second tip I have is you just have to face fear, and you have to put the hours in, and you have to be brave enough to chase what you love, right? Like, every time I do something, it's like an inch closer to being good at it, but I'm not really there. Like, I became a boxer in 7 months just for the adrenaline rush of stepping in the ring and being so afraid, right? Or like jumping off an airplane, just doing stuff that forces you to be like, spill a little bit more of your heart, like I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? They called me about this panel, I was like, let's go. I was like, let's go. You know, it's an opportunity to cut deeper, you know, and that's the whole point. And you will have to sacrifice if you want it. If you really want it. There'll be times when people party and you can't. The third point I would have is, and I think it's like the most important, is do what you really love, because it shows. You know, and anytime I've veered off and tried to do something that I didn't enjoy, life became so dull because everyone knew I didn't enjoy it. You know what I mean? Nothing worse than a society of people who don't like what they do. And we see that all the time, right? And I would complain about that about some teachers I had in business. I was like, they don't even care about this. So why would we listen to them? You know, it's very real. So like you have to identify and lock into what you do and what you love and stay there, because the passion and the enthusiasm will take you through. Like, it'll get you that next call, it'll get you that next step, it'll get you that next dollar, it'll get you that next session if you love it. People will believe in you. They'll bet on what you believe in. Yeah, that's what I got.
Fantastic. Yeah, you know, something that I've noticed about everyone sitting on this panel, you're doing things. And that's something that I think we can, like Maya talked about, like the comparison, like comparing what I'm doing to what somebody else is doing. Or Christian, you talked about like, if I have a bad show, like if I fail, it's gonna be this epic fail that everyone's gonna see and it's just gonna like ruin me. And you know, at least for me, I've recorded and mixed a lot of bad albums. I've made a lot of mistakes. And the thing is to just keep doing stuff. And so for me, I think that's something I'm really inspired by you all here, is that regardless of you know all the different adversities that you've had, you're just continuing to do stuff. And I mean, that's really the difference. I mean, if you're unsuccessful and you stop doing things, then there's that. That's the end of that story. But if you're unsuccessful and you try something else, I mean, you're continuing to move forward.
I think, I don't mean to interject, but I like how you talk about like mistakes, and I feel like I've talked about so many stories related to Murray, who's sitting right there in the audience. Murray, wow, check him out, great music. But like, especially like when making mistakes too, like a lot of the times, like I know like I'll get caught up and like I'll still get like red and like hot in the head when I like listen to an old song, then I'm like, oh, I totally botched this. But like, I feel really strongly about this one song, and that's Murray's favorite song that I've made, and it's like, if you think you've made a mistake, there's still a really good chance that, hey, someone else thinks this was like intentional, and even if they just might, someone might like your mistakes. So I feel like you can't let yourself get too caught up in trying to get it perfect and right at every single moment in the process.
I agree with that as well. It's kind of like, you know what song is like always going to be infinitely worse than the song that you like 60% hate is the song you don't put out at all and it doesn't even exist. Like, just put out a song you 60% hate and then you get one that you 50% hate next time. And then maybe you'll be happy, maybe you won't. But as long as you're posting stuff, you're winning. And as long as you're keeping it to yourself because you hate it, you're losing. So, and if you think it sucks too much, just like make another project. Like people make music, there's been somebody out there who's made music worse than you. No matter how bad you think you are, there's somebody out there worse than you, and it's fine. And sometimes people make music so bad that it becomes good again. So just try your best. And as long as you're having legitimate fun, you'll make either something of any value or no value at all. But if you just like sit still because it's not perfect, then you're just like everybody who's never made anything at all. And that's fine too if you want to do that, but it's like, it's worth a shot putting out music that you think isn't perfect. Because it's not like you're submitting it right away to like a complete, like, fully formed label meeting that's like, all right, what do you got for me? Like, what are you giving me? Like, that's not happening. You're just throwing it into the void of the internet where most people are like, oh my God, like, what's going on? Like, it's fine. Like, I think that you, like, just kind of do whatever, and if it's so bad that the entire project is ruined, you can start a new one. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it takes like bravery to step in the void and show people who you are, right? So like putting stuff out there is, it's kind of like what he said when we sat down. It's like you face the fire, you know what I mean? And the more you face that fire, like the more chiseled and just amazing you become. Like it's this self-enriching process. It's like a workout, you know what I mean? And what was I gonna? I was gonna say something cool. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, it's like also if you're anything like me, and I think a lot of like artists are, is like you will have moments where you meet people and they don't believe in you, and you're like, how do you not believe in me? Like, do you know what my mind is and what I've worked on and what I'm doing? Like, so now I watch Kanye's interviews where he's like going off on this rant, but it's because like he's the only person that sees the inside of his mind, right? And you can't. People have no reason to believe in you. You haven't shown and proven anything, but in your mind, you know you're capable. So you'll have that like weird ego that's like, man, like the world just doesn't get, like, they just don't get it, man. They don't get where I'm going, they don't get what I got, because you see the tree and they only see the seed. You know what I mean? It's very hard to convince if like an alien came to Earth and had never seen like tree life before, and you gave them a seed and you pointed to the tree, they'd be like, what? They'd see no connection. So like you're the only person that sees the seed. That sees the tree. This is a weird metaphor, I'm sorry. It's complicated. But it's important because like you being the only one that sees it, it's like you have a vision, you know what I mean? So like I imagine when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the gym 4 or 5 hours a day building his whatevers, people were like, why is this guy working out so much and eating so much food? But he had a vision, man. He was like, no. And so I think you should live in that space and never like, for me, what's powerful for me is like constantly revisiting that vision. And like whenever you go through something or a denial or like a pitfall that makes you feel small, you go back to that vision and you go back to like, wait, but I am that person. You know, it's like an identity thing. Like the whole journey is just a journey to find an identity. So like, you know, and you can choose that. You can really choose that. Or maybe it's chosen for you. That's like a more divine conversation. But yeah.
Fantastic. Are there any questions from the audience? Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask any of the panelists or anybody? Great. Here, let me get you this mic so you can ask the question. Is that okay?
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious to know what the name of the song is with 50 Cent that you played on.
Oh, so it wasn't 50 Cent's song. So it was this manager hit me up. Sean Mooney, look him up. They got into some beef and stuff. They had some issues. But yeah, his manager hit me up, and yeah, it's all over the internet. And basically, he manages this other artist, but the song hasn't been released yet. The artist's name is Felice. If you want to check him out on Spotify. But yeah, the song, I don't think it's gonna come out until like probably 2020. So.
Great. Any other questions? Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
I guess for people who like got their start at house shows, how you like got there, just transition from like house shows to like gigs at clubs or restaurants.
Great. Did everyone hear that? It was house shows, starting in house shows.
Yeah, I think, I started out playing a bunch of local shows and house shows, and I started out playing those through, I started just going to them because I thought I was genuinely really interested in a lot of different local artists and kind of like being in a space where people are being really creative and not as like, or I don't know, just really being creative. And so through going to those spaces and knowing my friends who were playing house shows, I started playing. At first I didn't play house shows, I played at, I think it changed its name, but it used to be called PA's Lounge. That was where my first show was. And like nobody was there, but it was chill. Like I played 2 shows there at first, and at one, it was like some dads at a bar who I didn't know. They weren't my dad or anyone's. I was just there by myself because the guy, he was like, sure, I'll book you, whatever. I just showed up and played a set. And it was fun. And then the other one, like, it was Berkeley bands and their friends were there. And that's how I met people I ended up playing house shows with later on. So it's like, I was just kind of playing any show and just being as polite as I could to people and just like enjoying the music and listening to people's songs. And I started playing more house shows after, or just in different kinds of places. And then through playing house shows, I just agreed to play more house shows, and I just kept going to them because I liked them. And yeah, I was just really enthusiastic about it. And through playing a bunch of house shows, then I got offers to be an opener at clubs for artists who were touring through. And then through being an opener long enough, I don't know if I ever, because it all changed. I was booking my own shows as, I was like just agreeing whenever somebody asked me to do something for like 2 years, and that's all I literally did. Like I was not an initiator at all. I was just like whatever, and that's like I ended up not wasting a lot of my. I had fun, but I mean like mainly because I was working alone. That was what allowed me to kind of do whatever, and if it didn't result in anything, then it was just my loss. But then when I moved to New York and started working at Island and put out No Dogs Allowed and started working with APA, that was when it all kind of changed, and that was when I was able to start agreeing to not what individual bookers sent me on Facebook or email, but what Greg and Carly sent me through email. And then it was kind of like, hey, would you want to hop on this run? Would you want to hop on this run? Would you want to route a show through here? And that's really what changed everything, is starting to work with an agency. But then really before that, it was I was able to play opening sets at a bunch of venues just from before I started working with APA, mainly in Boston, and house venues in other cities, through just showing up and being supportive and really just being excited to be a part of stuff in whatever way I could, and yeah.
Yeah, the house show scene for me here, my drummer actually got me into it. So I transferred in, so he had been here for like an extra year and was like, oh dude, I know these people and these people, do you want to like hop on a bill? And I was like, sure. So from there it was kind of like those connections where people would be at shows and be like, oh, I saw you here, do you want to hop on this? Or like me reaching out, I feel like that was really effective. So literally any venue, I'd be like over Facebook or over their email or over Instagram DMs, I'd be like, hey, even if their DMs were like, we're closed, we're not doing shows, literally reaching out and being like, hey, I know your DMs are closed, if somebody like cancels or falls through, I would love to hop on. And usually there's other people in those house venues that book otherwhere in like Boston or whatever, and they'll reach out and be like, oh, I saw that you DM'd us, we have a show up here or whatever. And then also, like, if you have a basement, like my drummer, because he had been booking for so long within the house show venues, he was like, I'm going to start my own venue. So it's like, he did that, and it's like, you can make your own venue in your basement and book your own shows, and that's like what he does now, and he's very good at it. So if you're ever thinking about doing that, get a house, get a basement.
I'd like to interject, because that's a really good point, because I played my first house show ever by messaging the page that was the originator, or the who put the shows together, and I was just like, hey, like, I've been coming to your things for a while, because I had like been going to them for a while and just being like, hey, that was so fun, like, awesome job. And then I was like, hey, if you ever need another person to hop on a bill, like, I'm down, here's a link. And then they messaged me like, yeah, we have one in 2 months, you can be on. So like, just being really polite and curt and being like, hey, I'm down to like play if you ever need somebody to play, is like really a good move. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's, and again with the like politeness of a cold email, like if you send somebody a long paragraph like, hello, it is my pleasure to introduce myself to you, or like, and it's a long thing about how you were born and where you grew up, like they don't want that. If it's like a Facebook message, you can be like, hi, I can play if you need somebody, like, all right. And that's fine. If you just like kind of like throw one of those out to people, they're never going to be offended to receive that, as long as it's not long and weird and aggressive.
Yeah.
I would double down on that, like keep it short, keep it not informal, but at least like, I don't know, I feel like people respond better when it's, you're not trying to be like Mr. Professional or Miss Professional.
Especially I feel like with house show venues, because it's like, it's people that are our age running it. Like, it's not like, I don't know, like you don't need to be like, hello, like you can use slang. Like, no, what? I would be weirded out if somebody was like all capital letters and be like, okay, no. So.
Yeah, I would say just throw darts at the wall, you know what I mean? And just kind of build a chain of events that take you somewhere, and recognize that like you're gonna have to do this a lot. I mean, you're gonna, like, real musicians will play like all the time, you know what I mean? So like if you do a show one night for 1,000 people and it's crazy and your whole crew's there and having a great time, the next night 4 people show up. That's the life. You know, you kind of just got to go through the trials and make sure you keep building the muscle for it. I've never played a house show. Yeah, I went straight to bars and straight to clubs because I thought that was so cool. It's like I could post on social media, I'm playing this club, that's amazing. But I was wrong. You know, play whoever's going to listen to you. If you're playing, I started playing weddings, and that's how my whole family realized I could perform. And they were like, oh, look at that. Look at that. You know, so like kind of build a reputation. My guy has something to say.
What's up? Yeah, so I played some house shows, and you know, like Berkeley's like the king of house shows, as you guys probably know. But yeah, you know, house shows are cool. They're definitely like a good in, and like I think honestly, it's just about going out and just like I always tell people, if you want more, do more. Like it's super cliche, but it's just so true. You know what I mean? Just do more. Just get it done. Like, you know, go out. You should be going out. You should be trying to get every opportunity you can get. Like, no stones unturned. You know what I mean? Hit up everybody you know. Like, yeah, obviously, the music has to be there, and you have to have a certain level of like knowledge of what you're doing. But I mean, you should be on the phone all day, making phone calls, trying to set things up, trying to do things. You know what I mean? Make things happen. Just make things happen. That's it.
Yeah, definitely boss up. Like, I remember we made an Excel sheet with 1,000 people to contact, and we just hit 1,000 people. We were like, yo, what's up? I heard you book shows. We'd like to get involved. That's literally what I said. And we had like a 2% return rate. So 20 people hit us back, and I was like, oh, word. And now we got some shows. Yeah.
I think definitely just like it's a numbers game with booking, and I think being open to really take any opportunity is a great attitude. I think one thing I've learned is that especially if you are in an ensemble act or you have a band, you need to make sure that everyone is on the same page and has a similar attitude as far as being open and kind of staying flexible. Because it's a lot of work to get the gig, and it just like sucks when your like drummers like pulls the rug out from under you and is like, hey, like actually I can't do any of these dates, and you're like, I just did all of that work to book the show. And it just sometimes I will say I love playing with a band, and I think it's my favorite way to play. But the more people you involve in a project, the less flexible you become, and just being able to say like, yes, I'll play the show this Friday, no problem. Like, so, yeah, I would say if I don't know. Sometimes I wonder like if my music could work as a solo act, maybe I could play out more, and maybe I could get more gigs for the band act. But then it becomes like a way of like, what is the band then at that point, or like what is the artist at that point? But yeah, I think size of the act is an important factor to consider.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're about out of time. If there are any other questions, do we have any other questions at all? Oh yeah, we have some in the back there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm afraid of making questions. Okay. If you don't want to answer, it's all right. Nowadays, I feel like people, when they consume art, they're also being political about it. They're also being moral about it. So if you have the best content, it might not matter if that person thinks you don't deserve their attention or if you're a bad person. So my question to you guys is, when to polarize, if you are going to polarize, and what is the balance point between being authentic and also not hurting possible public? I think that's a good way to put it.
And I think that goes into sort of your persona, your the face that you have on social media and the way you represent yourself. I think that's a really complicated question and equally complicated response. If anybody would like to talk about that at all, that'd be great.
You can go.
Okay. So I had the opportunity to work with someone, and it was less artistic and more of like a professional, practical sense. We were planning to work together, and I found out they had a little bit of a less than wholesome background, and it became more of like, who am I willing to associate with? And like, if I don't believe in what they're doing and can't back up what they're doing, then like maybe, despite the opportunities that may bring, maybe it's better to just kind of keep staying on my own path and like figure out a different way, because there are a million ways to do the same thing. So I think maybe, I think it's less of like an act. I think if you can't get behind an action that may be polarizing, then it's probably not a good idea to do it just for professional advancement, or even just for like quick gains. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good, very relevant question. I think that or something that in the question you said about like quality work versus the public persona facing forward. I think an important thing right now is that pretty much like a lot of genres and a lot of sub-varieties of music already exist. And if you're like the best rock band out there, there's already been so many rock bands that like no amount of guitar licks is gonna undo the fact that your friend is an asshole who's in your band. Like, because all the guitar licks have already been played. Like, they haven't already been played, but it's like, I don't know. Like, I think that being true to yourself and being honest to yourself is the best move that you can do. And I think that entering something with a predetermined political strategy for your music, unless the music itself is political, is not going to go over well. I think you just have to call the shots with the situations that are in front of you, and you're going to have to keep doing that over and over again. And I think that if you want to be truly neutral and truly purely musical, you need to aim for major label music, and you need to aim for that kind of thing. But I really don't have any answers either, but I think that I've encountered vaguely politicized situations over the course of my life playing music, and I think that I just, what I've done, which like, I'm not going to say it's right or it's wrong, is just like react to each situation in the way that I think is best as like a human being, and just kind of wing it every time, because that's all you're going to be doing is just winging it every time. And so as long as you can kind of commit to the bit of your own life, and just wing it every time, that's all you can ever do. And if you walk into the music industry saying like, I am a centrist, like what? No, like you just have to react to everything that actually happens to you over and over again. And it is going to be difficult because the world is difficult, and that's really it. But I think that being fake in any way, people will smell it from 5,000 miles away, and it'll make them not want to listen to you.
I have the opinion of if you believe something, shout it. You know what I mean? Like, we need people to stand up, especially today. Like, I'm not even with a specific agenda. It doesn't have to fit that. Just whatever you believe, be vocal, you know? And be humble enough to change. If you express something and it turns out to not be true, or you go, wow, I never thought about it like that. You know, like, I think a big problem in America and the world in general is we attach so much to ideas that we can't change. And then it becomes just us versus them, and that's like such a human thing, you know? But like, be passionate, you know what I mean? If you have a strong view of something, I wouldn't even consider the political ramifications. I would speak up and say, yo, that's not right, or that is right, or that's whatever. And then in that process, you'll open up dialogue, and people will say, well, actually, and if you're humble, you'll be able to say, oh, I never thought about it like that. You know what I mean? And then as a second point, oh, this is a great story. So working for Universal, there was an awkward moment where they would have us, part of the job, they're not gonna like me saying this. Part of the job, I probably shouldn't say that. Yeah, just yeah, whatever. I'm not working for them anymore. They would have us post about artists acting like we liked them and supported them, you know. And I had a real issue with that. And I was like, I'm not gonna pretend like I like some shit that is intoxifying the world, you know. So me personally, if there's a video where we know rap music. If there's a video where there's guns everywhere and it's all about gang ties and drugs and shit that I just am not about, I'm not posting the video. So fire me. So like, you know, word, you know, like be real. And she said the word honesty, which is like, to me, the greatest thing you can have in life is self-honesty. You know, and before you say something, or even after, just look at yourself and be like, do I really believe that? Because a lot of us defend points of view that we don't actually believe, you know? So, that's my advice, and don't be fake. Just speak what you actually feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also like to, or I don't know, in part of not being fake is, at least for me, not being fake is me recognizing that my weaknesses are interacting with people and my strengths are making music alone in my house, and that affects how I deal with politics and talking to people. So if you're not an expert on something, that's something that keeping that knowledge in your head will help you out as well. And I agree with what you said, also like if you're not, like if you know something's not your strength, it doesn't have to be your strength, and you don't have to act like it's your strength. You're allowed to be like, I really don't know what I'm doing, and I am not sure. And instead of just like pretending to be very intense about the thing that you're not even sure about. If you're not intense about it and you're not sure about it, don't pretend to be and just get yourself in deep shit for no reason. Like, admit that you don't know and be ready to learn, and don't be quick to hop on the defense.
Awesome. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this is all like very happy and flowery and so inspirational. What was kind of like something that annoyed you after coming up recently and to go about going around it, avoiding it, fixing it, whatever the case may be?
Marcus wants to
You're in.
handle that.
I don't want to take away from you guys, I'm for real, but real quick. The other day, actually it was like a week ago, I was in one of my classes, and we had like a booking manager come in. This he's booked over like 30 acts, like really, really well-known acts. And we kind of went around the room, and everyone kind of said like, oh, what do you want to do for a living? And they got to me, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I want to play trombone for a living. And he kind of like chuckled, and he was like, oh, good luck. And I was like, word. And I went home that night, and I shed for like 7 hours. I was in the practice room for like 7 hours. It pumps me up. You know what I mean? Like when that kind of thing happens to you, either you're gonna quit or you're gonna work. You know what I mean? So that's what you got to do. Like if you love it, put in that work.
Yeah, I had a pretty bad morning today. I got a phone call, and I was hashing it out with an artist that I managed. Won't say which one. I've only managed one though. And without spelling the details of it, he basically was just ungrateful as hell for all the sacrifices I made, and it was such a moment where I was like, man, I bled with you, I starved with you. You know what I mean? I forego tuition checks for you. And it's like sometimes life changes, and you have to build your business acumen to have a future mindset. And we ended our terms by saying, man, if you don't agree to the deal we have in writing, we're going to court. And like, it's so crazy, man, I never thought I'd have to take my brother to court, right? But like, I would say just using that and not dwelling in the hate, and I could sit here and be angry at him forever, or I could learn from the process. And I could say, okay, how can I change how I move going forward? How can we do better? How can we fix this? How can we, having a positive outlook and not letting the roadblocks turn into like dwelling, like don't dwell on the roadblocks. You know what I mean? They're tests. You just have to keep pushing.
I'd say it's like someone who definitely invests myself into the projects I work on. Sometimes maybe too much for the role I'm in for that project. I think like the best piece of advice I can give to like dealing with like annoyances like that is to just like stay flexible, but really know like what you want from the project, and really know like what you kind of want for yourself, because I think it is important. Sometimes I feel like I'm like worried about being too selfish, but then I feel like I totally lose connection with the project I'm on. I think it's important to know that, especially too, like I've had people like within the project tell me like, hey, like, like you have no idea what you're doing, and if I wasn't here, like this would be garbage. And it's like, how, like, first of all, that doesn't help me at all, and like if I sit on that for too long, like I'm just gonna have no more engagement with this. So you gotta like try and like,
it's not gonna make it better.
Yeah, like people will like put you down, and you just gotta like somehow change your perspective on that, and do what you can to like get around that. I think for me it was just like that kind of comment just made me kind of like reanalyze like what did I want from this project, and like why do I think I need this person here with me in the room to get it done. There was another example. I was recording and producing this album with a hip hop artist, and I was willing to make sacrifices on my end, so long as there was an understanding that they would kind of put some more effort onto other elements of the project. And I was comfortable with that, and I was aware of that, but it seemed like something got lost in communication, so we ended up having to talk it out, and it took a while, but I think we kind of ended up coming on the same page. I think just like getting around that was just like be open to communication, be open to like putting yourself out like on the table and being open with what you want out of the project. And I think especially dealing with artists and dealing with people who like really invest themselves in, because like I'm guilty of this too, like I totally invest myself in elements of the project, and like someone will come in and just say like a rogue comment and it like crushes me. And that doesn't help the project move forward. So I think maybe one of the most practical things that I've tried to practice is really having an I perspective, and like really talking from a perspective within yourself. So like, like I'll talk to my mixing engineer, and I'll be like, hey, I could be like, hey, you totally botched this, like the drums sound like garbage, and like that's not gonna help the project move forward at all. I would want to rephrase that to say like, hey, like I am not sure I am hearing the drums in the way I expected. Can we talk about maybe what you did and like maybe try some new things? And like I feel like those are saying the same thing, but in a very different way that still has people's feelings in mind and a respect for the way everyone is investing themselves in a project.
That sort of reminds me of starting out as a recording engineer and working with artists, and sometimes they'd be of some notoriety, and just sitting in a session and saying, no, that was wrong, you need to do it again. And just saying wrong and you was enough to upset some artists. So I started this whole practice of saying like, oh, I think we can go back again and let us try another pass like we, and using that instead of saying you did something wrong. And it's funny because it only takes a matter of time before the artist saying like, well, are you singing with me? Why do you keep saying we? Are you singing with me? But it's just a way to kind of deal with, like you said, like things need to be changed, something's not the way we want it, it's not part of our vision, but we don't want to go and just like blame someone or put somebody on the spot where then they have to then kind of stand up for themselves or answer to it.
I think having that like we attitude is like a very good practical thing, but I think just as like a general mindset, like music making, even like I do a lot of like the initial, like a lot of my own music I do alone in my bedroom for like hours on end, and like I come out with this thing, but then I gotta bring it to other people, and the moment I kind of take it out of my computer in my bedroom, it becomes a team sport, and like I'm working with a ton of different people, and if I'm still thinking of like this music as singularly and like absolutely my own, I feel like it only hurts the progress of the project. And I think like it's still really important to have a connection with the music, and like I've totally lost connection with projects because I was willing to kind of sacrifice that connection. But I think just kind of like having the perspective that like you're working with many people. It's never just one person in a room. I mean, it can be, but yeah.
Could I add that briefly? I'm so sorry. Surrender yourself to like other people's skills. Like mix engineers and stuff, like what really took my stuff to a new level was stepping back and being like, just do what you do and I'm gonna do what I do and we'll combine and make something great. Yeah.
To a point, I definitely do agree with that. Like I said, mixing is not my strength, recording is not my strength, so I definitely do like to use other people that know more than I do with that. With something I think that has made me upset, again, I'll go back to my EP, but there was an issue just with it where objectively it was not well mixed. It was very sloppy, and I can hear that, like I have gone through mixes before, I know what I'm talking about when it's not good. And my language towards that was very much like, hey, these are kind of hidden. I feel like the vocals are like a little muddy. I can't hear a lot of things. Can we go back and redo this? And the person was like, you need to keep your expectations in check, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not doing, I was like, one, I know that you would not be talking to me like this if I was a guy. And two, I know what I want. And if you can't have expectations where it sounds good, then you're off the project essentially. So I think if people are on your team and they're being disrespectful to a point where it's like they're not listening to what you're saying, you know what you want out of your music. Yes, you have to keep your expectations in check. You can only do so much when it's like students mixing your stuff, other students mixing your stuff, a budget, whatever have you. But at the same time, it's like if people are not willing to work hard on the project that you have, then you need to move along and find somebody else that's going to respect your work that you're doing. So I think for me, that's been like a big thing.
I think that's a really good point. I think really what's annoyed me most in this entire music industry is my own self, because I'm pissed off. Because I straight up would try to record with somebody and I would have all these ideas, but I was a bad communicator, which meant I couldn't work with anybody. And anytime I went into a studio, I couldn't do anything except sing quietly and look upset the entire time. And so. But I knew that if I went into my house, I could make like a jazz chord if I just sat at my computer for long enough. But I was a terrible communicator, I had bad social anxiety, and I couldn't do anything if I was in a studio with people who were smarter than me, who knew the language, who knew how to talk about things. And whenever I would try and work with other people, they would make decisions that I didn't know how to describe what they did, but I didn't like the way it sounded. And I just knew that I sounded like a dumb idiot, being like, but I wanted to sound like more crispier, and they would be like, oh, her feelings are hurt, let me turn it on. It's like, no, I'm gonna go make a badly mixed album in my own house to prove nothing. And that's what I did over and over again, and I'm annoyed with myself now because now I like, due to the algorithmic spike, I like stopped really working on music and stopped recording and started thinking in larger terms again, like what would I make, what would I want to make now, who am I working with tomorrow right now. And really what's helped me up to this point is being like, it's not a big deal. Music is when you make sounds that people listen to for fun, and for other, but mainly for fun. And like, if somebody knows how to mix drums better than you, that's great. But you can mix bad drums on your own and nobody will get hurt. And like, that's allowed and that's fine. And as long as you're making something instead of sitting quietly, letting other people do things they're better at than you, it's fine. As long as you're not causing any harm to anyone, as long as nobody's hurt by you being bad, you're fine. And like, you don't have to hand over every aspect of everything to experts, because we already know what hi-fi music sounds like, we already know what perfect pop music sounds like, and if you think that you can be one puzzle piece in a perfect pop song, that's great. But if you feel inadequate about that ability, you don't have to do. There's so much stuff out there, and just kind of like being nice to people, making sure you're not hurting anybody, being curious about what you want to study and what you want to do is like completely fine as well. And so I think that you don't have to put out a perfect thing ever, and whatever you put out is never going to sound perfect to you, and that's fine.
Well, great. I think that's about all the time we have for tonight or this evening. Do we have any other questions, or I just don't want to cut anybody off? Well, this has been fantastic. It's really been great to hear you guys speak about your experience. And thank you for being really honest about your process and what you do. I guess I would say, does anybody have any sort of last words, last comment, motivational statement?
Oh, 1,000%.
1,000%.
Yeah. Go super hard. Watch every interview ever. Read everything ever. Put the hours in. Talk with people. Stay inspired. Do what you love. Stay away from stuff that you don't. Collaborate with great, amazing people. Make just enough money to live. Don't get the car too early. I promise you, it's a mistake. You know, and like the greatest piece of advice I've probably ever gotten was like, the goal is to enrich people's lives. The goal is to enrich people's lives, right? So like, and I'm saying that twice because I'm trying to embed it in my head, right? So like, it's just, you know, play with meditation, like work out, you know what I mean? And go hard. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I started writing and releasing music, as just basically ripping off other artists. A lot of my first music was like...
That's what
everybody does it. You look at the chords online, you use them in your song. That's what everybody starts with.
Learn from other people, no matter what. You can't be completely original, ever. If you grow up in a cave, you're going to make music that copied the cave. Yep.
Oh.
There's absolutely no shame in that. And I think one of the strongest things you can do is just try to like understand, like, why are you ripping off this artist? You know, like, what do you like about this artist that you are trying to bottle right here? And I think that can really help you find out what your artistic vision is, because sometimes that's like a very fluid and like, it's just like a cloud and you're like kind of working towards, it feels like nothing, but sometimes understanding that relationship really helps you set goals for yourself, which can be really useful when it comes to just saying like, hey, is this done? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, music's subjective, you know what I mean? Like, remember that, like, you know, whatever you're making, you know, just because one person likes something, it doesn't mean that, you know, like, it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't good enough. It's completely subjective. Like, every audition you go and perform, like, any adjudicator you perform in front of, or any kind of person that's going to judge your music or whatever, it's just one person in a room, it's just one person's opinion. So, yeah, I mean, it's super subjective. It's like one of the most subjective art forms there is, right? I could be wrong. I mean, there are definitely others, but you know what I mean? So, yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Like, don't worry about what anyone thinks about what you're doing, for real.
Nas had that song One Mic where he talked about how all he needed was him in a mirror to feel good about himself. All he needed was one microphone and a mirror. And he loved what he was doing. If you can find that, that mirror can turn into the world. And like that's, yeah, sure.
Fantastic. Anything else? Well, I think we, did everyone get all that, by the way? Did everyone write all that down? A lot of great advice, a lot of great comments, and a lot of honesty, which was really inspiring. I think we should have a huge round of applause for all of this. Thanks so much, and thanks so much to the Live Music Association for putting on such a great event. A round of applause for the Live Music Association. Awesome. So I think with that, we'll call it adjourned. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your night.